Hey Wyatt, I've
Hi,
got this
Robert.
on.
Hi, Paul. Oh, I have
Hello.
my Trump in and out and in shirt on. You have your revenge shirt on. Paul, you have a Fauci shirt on.
Yes, this is Fauciism
Oh,
Be-
I love it.
because fascism is the word of the year.
Graphic tees are the actual best. You can say you can have a style, you can say what you believe all in a shirt.
I
Absolutely.
love it.
Are you here? Okay, let's roll on into episode number 1045 of the Paul Leslie Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the grande finale of 11 days of interviews covering America's ultimate election, the 2024 vote. And what do we have for you? Well, backed by popular demand, we've got those boys. Them guys. Wyatt Torosian and Robert McCready are here to chew the fat. And of course, Paul's here too. He's chewing the fat. They're going to be talking about all the election night coverage for 2024. And we're going to get this out of the way before we begin. YouTube removed Paul's recent interview with 8-time best-selling author Dr. Naomi Wolf. YouTube objected to the fact that Dr. Wolf pointed out that Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris referred to the 45th President Donald J. Trump as a fascist. Paulie appealed, and YouTube immediately denied the appeal. Now keep in mind, Kamala Harris did, in fact, say that on national television. Just thought you should know. The Naomi Wolf interview is still available on X and on Rumble, where you apparently are allowed to say things that are true. You can still choose to subscribe to this show on YouTube, but by all means, follow the fellas on X, formerly known as Twitter. Okay, we won't keep you waiting any longer. Here's Paul Leslie, Wyatt Torosian, and Robert McCready in conversation.
Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I think. So let's roll into this episode of the Paul Leslie Hour. By popular demand, I should add, Wyatt and Robert are back. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be back.
It's quite an
Happy to
occasion.
be back. I feel like I'm waving like Gilbert Gottfried on Hollywood Squares, but I'm happy to be back here.
This must be how Trump feels to be back.
Ah,
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
but we had Dick Cheney and his daughter.
We had Oprah and Taylor Swift.
We had an array of pop stars that have not had a hit in the 2020s.
We had
Right.
2 assassins.
Right.
Two genders, 2 assassins, 2 terms. Many are saying it.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Right, yeah, the jokes. But look what we've done. How many people did we persuade? How much fun did we have doing this? We had original takes.
you can't quantify these things,
No.
but they're fun to think about. So I'm just curious to know from you all, aside from all the jokes, what are your initial thoughts?
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. For the past, maybe a month ago, I said, you know what? I'm just not going to stress about this. I'm going to be fine no matter what happens. And I'm going to be calm. And I just, and a friend of mine said, is that because you think you're going to lose? And at that moment in my spirit, I knew the answer was no. I just felt confident and I felt calm. And I was concerned to make sure I didn't feel proud. And I never felt proud. I even debated, for a year whether or not to get a Trump revenge shirt because I didn't know if I wanted revenge, even though I wanted revenge. I didn't want to promote that. And then I thought, it's just for fun. I'll get it. And so I just feel unsurprised. I feel happy. I'm cool.
And Wyatt,
For years now, I've had faith in Trump's ability to come back and win again. And Even in 2020, I said, okay, take the election at your peril because he's going to come back and he's going to win. And I have to say, almost nobody believed me. People on the left, people on the right, people I trusted, people in government, people in the private sector, people from all backgrounds. And I said, I don't think you understand what you're dealing with here. The man's going to come back and he's going to win. And I feel content and I feel vindicated in my assessment.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, when I think about people who 100% were confident all the time, you really never faltered, Wyatt. It was really remarkable. It was like, no, it'll be all right, no matter what happened.
I appreciate that. I had faith, and there were times it was difficult, and I thought, oh, there's dicey things happening, but I've never seen someone like Trump who just fails forward every time, from a mugshot to an arrest to, being in front of a jury to falling on that ground in Butler, Pennsylvania, and everything in between. The man just does not get down without getting back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's remarkable is that we three, even before we connected on Zoom, had the same idea about Trump. We weren't DeSantis people. We weren't, looking for something else. We kind of just knew what was wrong, and we knew that we had to accomplish a certain thing. And that's kind of where we went. I remember you and I, Paul, were talking in my living room, and we were like, we got to cram it back down their throat. And if there's another person that can do that, great. But I just don't see another person that can cram it down their throat.
Yeah.
And then when people had criticisms, Wyatt and I would have these discussions. We didn't care about any criticism another person had except for Ann Coulter.
Right.
And we would listen. We go, yeah, that's a good criticism. But no one else's criticisms mattered. They were grasping at straws.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all this?
They made him better. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This occurs to me, something that I was thinking early on when the prospect of a Trump return, of him doing a Grover Cleveland, first came about. I thought to myself, if you have a bully and you kind of make a deal, you bargain with the bully, you will never really, really win. You just won't. You have to punch the bully in the face. You just have to do it. And I'm not advocating violence at all. I mean that in a poetic sense, let's just say. But that's what needed to happen. You can't bargain like that. So I know that there's so many and we only have so much time, but what was Kamala Harris's and her campaign's biggest mistake?
Where do we start?
Running.
I know.
The whole thing was a mistake. They were on the side of Satan, was probably the biggest mistake. They wanted to carry out his wicked desires, and they were full of lies. And I mean that literally. There's more than one gender. That Algerian is a woman. It wasn't the Last Supper. We're winning. We're not going back. And yes, they were. They did not even get their law of attraction saying back. They were fools. They were liars. We don't know what race she is. We don't know her plan. She got no votes. They didn't even hold a primary, which they didn't have to, but they didn't do it. They projected onto other people. They had no transparency. Men love darkness because their deeds are evil. And that was the primary problem with them.
Breathtaking. I mean, you covered just about everything. I will posit one specific thing, though. Their biggest mistake was not picking Shapiro as her vice president. Waltz was just a distraction at best and a destructive sideshow at worst. And had you had an effective speaker like a Shapiro, who's good looking, who can get a point across, who maybe could have delivered Pennsylvania, then you had a shot. And that was her first and biggest decision of the campaign. And it cursed it from then on that she picked that flailing lunatic.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's very tempting to say that the biggest mistake that the Kamala Harris campaign made was trying, because it just wasn't going to happen. And, you know, you really have to know your limitations. And she just was not cut out for this. That was very easy to see very early on. So you can't really tell somebody who is that arrogant, don't be arrogant. It's built in. So I would really struggle to answer the question, what was the worst mistake? There were so many. I mean, media was not their thing. Public relations wasn't their thing. I mean, you know, you could just go on all day.
Saying no to Rogan was her last mistake.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. Now, I'm curious, what were you guys watching or scrolling or listening to tonight?
Twitter, and then when I got back from a walk, my mother, said, turn on the TV, and I was watching CBS for a long time, and then I switched to NBC.
And I was at an event that some friends threw. Still here now. It's a home that they rented for the occasion, and so there were three TVs: Fox, MSNBC, CNN, and everyone was just looking at Twitter on their phones, or X on their phones. I think I can call it X now because and Elon helped. And the great part was at least two of the TVs were in sight line, so I could sit here and watch CNN, and then Fox was right there, so I could keep an eye on the tallies for both, and people were jumping from room to room, as results were called in.
Yeah, I was kind of jumping around. I'll admit that I was hate watching NBC. X was just a necessity. It almost goes without saying, looking at all this stuff. But yeah, I was watching the dour faces on NBC. I knew pretty early on this is not going well. They kind of knew it, I think, even before a lot of the battleground states started being decided. You could just kind of tell there was something in the air. They felt like this is not going well. How would you all define, what did Kamala run on?
She ran on, it was all like opposite day. We're going to make America great again. We're not going back. Right. It was reactionary. There was nothing original in anything. So they ran on, I hate to say not Donald Trump, because that is what the propaganda says.
Right.
But I just see it as opposite day.
What about you, Wyatt?
I think that it really is the not Donald Trump, because I don't even think she made an effective case for I'm a woman or I'm black or any of the things you would think she could make a case on her own, in absence of any actual policy. So I think that's what it was, and it was sad.
Yeah, it was sad. I felt like, if anything, Kamala and the entire Democratic Party machine, they were running on some kind of contempt. It was anger and a lot of hatred. I mean, it was just like one thing after the other. You're Nazis, you're garbage. It seemed pretty evident this is not a winning campaign. You're not going to win over people with this kind of vitriol. Apparently, it wasn't.
And it spread to their supporters too. They were arrogant. They were mean.
You can run on contempt for the ruling class. You cannot run on contempt for the American people and expect to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you all see the little clip of Van Jones from CNN?
I didn't.
This is
I
going to be.
But I heard from the other room that he was a little bit misty-eyed.
Oh yeah. He was really blaming everybody, saying that if somebody is a black woman, they're going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to feel like they're not enough because Kamala lost.
Well, she was not enough. She wasn't black enough to win. If she was an actual black woman, she would have had a chance, because she could have run on, I'm a descendant of African slavery. My family's been in this country for many generations. I helped build this country. She went to an HBCU. She was in an all black sorority, but she was at the end of the day, just an Indian woman. Did a disservice to both women from the Black community and the Indian community by being so mediocre.
Yeah. Okay, this is a serious question. It's not a joke. Should they have kept on riding with Biden? We'll start with Robert.
uh, no, they shouldn't have, but they should have had a process where the voters could have done something. But they didn't want to give anybody that much control. They wanted a complete control over it, and this is what they got. They were trying to have control over something that does not really exist the way that it did anymore. We have X, we have Elon, we're winning the cultural revolution. We are defeating them, just like the Argentinian president said, in art and beauty, in religion. They have nothing, and they were trying to control something that was dead, and it didn't work out. And it would have been worse for us if there was an RF Kennedy Jr. Marianne Williamson ticket. But as it is, it worked out better for us to have this stilted robotic candidate that was just fulfilling the duties of the satanic system that put her there in the first place.
All right, Wyatt.
I think they should have kept him.
Yeah.
I think he would have done better among Black voters, and he would have at least had a chance. And it was, 90 days, 120 days? They could have kept him in hiding for that long, and they would have had a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Which is why
Wyatt.
I was so surprised when he was replaced. And previously when we spoke, I made the case that he would stay. He would stay on.
Yeah, I think he would have lost, but maybe not as bad as her, because she was just so bad.
And it could have been a noble loss.
Right.
It could have been he gave it his all, and he really tried, and they could have sacrificed him. And if she would have run again in 4 years, she would have had to maybe build up her resume, and she could have maybe won.
Yeah, I agree with that, because if they're going to hide her the whole time from interviews, they could have just done the same thing with him.
And now she's not going to have a career after this unless she tries to run for California governor, which she might, or the rumor is. But, now it's just humiliating. She might not be able to do anything after this.
What do you think the playbook for the left is going to be over the next few years? I have a pretty strong feeling, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Robert, you go on this one. I got to think of this one.
I don't know if I have any insight. I've they're going to say, oh, well, we lost because we lost momentum. I saw a Fed Up Lesbian retweeted something that someone else said, and it was very clever, but I can't remember what it was. She said, they're definitely going to say that. I can't remember what it was, though. Who knows what they'll do? I hope that they don't try to kill Donald Trump again. I hope that, anything's possible with these people, but I don't have any insight at all, unfortunately.
In past elections where the left has lost by a lot, the lesson that they usually learned is they need to moderate. And so that's how you had Bill Clinton, who basically ran as a Republican. When Kerry lost, they ran Obama, who was, I guess you could say, more progressive, but also more genial. But Obama ran as like a vaguely conservative man who just happened to be a Democrat. So they're going to have to pick someone who basically sounds like a conservative, but isn't. And they're probably going to have to move away from the progressive talking points. That's prediction one. Prediction two is they just go so far into the hard left that they're unrecognizable, which is, I think, an equal possibility of potentially happening. But I don't know.
I get a feeling. This is just a gut thing, which who knows if you should trust your gut that much. I think that they are going to go really, really hard into the gender war. I think that the race thing is it's still there, the race hustling thing, but I think that that's starting to lose momentum. I think people are not buying it as much, and I think a lot of that has to do with Trump. I think they're getting kind of tapped out on that. The people on NBC, especially Jen Psaki, they were really, really framing this as boys versus girls. Jen Psaki was saying things like, oh, the country's not ready yet. And I'm suspecting that we're going to hear for the next few years, we're going to be hearing that a lot. We're going to be hearing, well, we almost had a woman president twice, but the patriarchy is still so strong. We don't get that. And so that's the kind of feeling that I'm getting.
I think you could be right because you've been right about other things. Like it's a subtle thing that you're good at seeing the subtleties of things, Paul Leslie. And I could see them. So gender, just woman stuff, but not necessarily trans stuff.
Yeah, the trans thing is people are getting tired of that as well because again, it's hey, not a lot of people care about what you do in your house, but people don't want to be forced into a delusion. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Do what you want to do. I hear that from people all the time when I interview people. It's like, okay, sure. But it's like, don't ask me to join in with you. And that's been the thing about the trans movement the last couple of years. It's been like, no, you need to join me in this. You need to indulge me. And people don't like that.
That's very important. I think it's people not wanting to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And so if they become the party of women or for women, I can see them just really trying to hit hard on women who are, going into their 40s, 50s, 60s, their concerns. And that's going to be, I mean, in the past couple of weeks of the campaign, that's been their marketing. It wasn't elect a woman, it's elect this woman for the women in your life, the daughters, the mothers, the sisters, the aunt that you only see once a year, Christmas, and don't like, but do it for her. And so it's kind of been that was kind of their push towards the end. So I could definitely see like an acceleration in that direction.
Yeah. Well, my closing question here, what do you think you're going to say about this night in 20 years or in 30 years?
I want to say, I'm going to remember that David Chapman on Twitter called this a long time ago because he was looking at historical records and he said Grover Cleveland did this when there was a rigging of Indiana and there was a third party and then it happened. And so I'm going to remember that and I'm going to say that was kind of, for some reason, I trusted that this whole time. And then I'm going to say I tried very hard to ignore the propaganda and come up with my own reasons. And the reasons I was voting for Donald Trump was because I witnessed a miracle. Any worry that I had that it would be more of the same or nothing would get done went out the window. And the other thing that I was going to be looking at, well, there are a bunch of Haitians in my town. And I noticed it when I worked at the DMV before Haitians became a trendy thing. And so I just knew there was too many. I probably have processed hundreds of applications for foreigners coming into South Korea. It's just too many. I knew that was too many, but now it's trendy to say it. So it seems like I just got influenced. And I also wanted to only look at something that no one else was looking at. So I only looked at bellwether counties the entire night. So I was just ignoring everything. I was, refreshing my phone screen on its own because I just wanted to have, a pure look at things. And I felt calmer and it was obvious how it was going and it was great. And I just want people to know that the biggest thing is I felt like I didn't feel like I was on the side of good. I could tell what evil was and I didn't want to be on the side of that.
I can appreciate that, Robert. And I want to yes and you. I think looking back at this night in 20 years, 2044, which will there be an election? I think there will be an election. I would look back and think, there's no such thing as all hope is lost. And I'll leave it there.
That's great. Well, I think that we will tell the young'uns when we're the old'uns. I think we're going to say that we were alive during that time and that we saw that and that it was exceptional and that there's a lot of people who now talk fondly of Trump that back then were criticizing him. And I think we'll tell the youngsters, we're going to say, and everyone was against him. The celebrities, all of them, which this is a clear sign that their era is really, it's ending. The celebrity era is really, really coming to a screeching halt. But the education system, the federal government, everyone was against him. The globalist corporations, everybody was against Trump. And somehow the media did everything they could to stop that car. And it just kept going. And he won anyways. It's a miraculous thing. And I think we'll always remember this night.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that.
It's a good night in America, and it's just the beginning.
The best is yet to come.
Yes.
The golden age is upon us.
Well, it's 3:30 a.m. We've got to get this out there and into the world. You all are very merciful and intelligent, entertaining. I feel very lucky to have had this conversation and all of our conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul, for having us and putting this together and organizing it. It's been great, and we're part of history now because of you.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, listeners.
Yes. Thank you to everybody out there. It means a lot.
And thank you to the haters and losers.
Thanks to them, too. Well, it was a perfect campaign. We'll just say that.
It was a perfect
campaign.
It was a perfect campaign.
All right, guys. Until next time. We'll see you.
Good night.
Later.
You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.